I want to tell you about this lock and haul. This is a new style transom saver replacement. It's very small, compact. It's made out of modern materials, aircraft aluminum, Delrin, and nylon. Everything is corrosion resistant on it. It's tough as nails. It's light. It can easily be stowed in the back of the boat. One main function of this device right here is that it removes all of the shaking of the outboard motor while it's on your trailer while you're going over the rough roads. It does not tether down to the trailer as the old transom savers do. The trouble with those old transom savers is that they were actually created for when the outboard motors didn't have any hydraulics on them. So there was no tilt and trim, and the motor could freely pivot up and down on the back of the boat. Actually, the gravity would make the lower unit of the boat hit the pavement unless there was something to hold it up. It held the motor in position with it tilted high enough to keep the lower unit off of the pavement. Now that the outboard motors are always loaded on their hydraulics, the motor can no longer move away from that transom saver when you are going over the rough roads and the bumps and the holes. So what you're getting in effect is a motor that is in a fixed position and a moving object that is moving against it as it goes over the bumps. The lower unit is basically hammering the lower unit on the motor. This style transom saver isolates that trailer altogether. The trailer is no longer part of the rigging. It goes between the motor mount and the lower unit of the boat itself. And on the outboard motor, you have two pivots. You have the tilt pivot. The other pivot system is the steering rod pivot, where when you turn your steering wheel, the motor turns at an angle. That's how you turn your boat. You need to be stabilized during trailering. Otherwise, your motor will shake around on the back of your boat. This single device right here is easily user adjustable to fit most sizes and models of all outboard motors, all the way down from 50 horsepower up to 350 horsepower engines. I've put this lock and haul on. You can see I've made these adjustment bolts here out of flexible material, which is nylon, and I've made that specifically for the purpose of being able to adjust the spacing of the top ends and the bottom ends differently, because on some outboard motors you've got a couple of flange bolt heads up at the top that are not the same distance apart as the lower cavities that the bottom part has to fit into. So I've made this where it can be adjusted like this. It can also be adjusted the other way around, where the bottoms are further apart than the tops are. It's real easy to adjust. It doesn't require any tools. You can do it by hand. I'm going to show you now how this thing is installed, or how it works. I want you to get a look at these flange bolt heads down here. This is the steering pivot that comes down to here. This is where it actually pivots. There are some flange bolt heads right here that are they're what's holding the lower part of the outboard motor to this steering column. A couple of bolt heads right here. The Evinrudes are recessed back in. The Yamahas and Mercuries are exposed like this. That's where this end right here fits. It fits on just like so. The motor mount itself, down in the bottom, there are a couple of recesses. There are pockets. And this rounded end on the lock and haul is what fits in there. So what you do is you adjust your spacing here to where you've got the round ends going right into the pockets, and then you adjust the tops where they're centering right onto the bolt heads themselves. Then all you have to do to install this is you have to put it on your bolt heads. I put it on bolt heads first, up here like so. Hold on to it with your hand, and then just guide it in. Guide the lower ends into those pockets, and then just snug it on down with the hydraulics. And the motor is solid as it can be at that point. I've also included this little retaining lanyard right here, made of aircraft cable steel. And I take it and I just pass the cable around the main hydraulic piston, and then just clamp it right back to the cable itself, like such. That way, if you don't get the lock and haul device on straight, it's dislodged and falls out, then it'll just be hanging here when you stop, and you can just put it back in and go on your way. The most important thing about fitting this device up is that you do load these tubes evenly with your hydraulics, so that requires you to get your motor very straight. In the instructions I tell you how to do that until you get used to it, I tell you a way to do it according to step-by-step instructions. And it requires getting the outboard steering straight, so that you can hit centers on these pockets down here and still have centers on the bolt heads.